Leanne is the executive director of the San Diego Asian Film Foundation and has also been really instrumental in helping us put this conversation together. Leanne also was a television broadcast journalist in San Diego as well, so comes from that perspective, but is now working full-time with the foundation to further, I think, what film festivals are doing and the role that film festivals play, right? Everybody's role is changing in this landscape. So I want to welcome Leanne and start the conversation.
Thanks, Karen. So nice to see everybody here. And you know, you talked about love. I mean, that's the bottom line while we're all here, right? Because we love, we're passionate, and we're committed to what we're doing. So this is a great opportunity for us to be under the same roof, learn from one another by having a conversation. So first, we wanted to see who is going to be part of this conversation. So I want to acknowledge the folks in the audience in these different corners of the industry, because we are going to have a really robust dialogue today. So for those who are, since we're at a film festival, who's here representing the independent film space? Producers, writers, directors, actors, raise your hand. Okay. What about film festival organizers and programmers? Okay, quite a handful there. Anyone in the digital media space? Great. And then any educators out there? All right, you brave few. And then television. We got a few in there. Oh, all the television folks are sitting in the back. And we'll be hearing from you guys in just a bit. So as you guys see that there's quite a few people from different, did I skip anybody?
How about students?
Students. Okay, so now that we kind of have an understanding of like who's in the audience, I think that's going to be very, very helpful. So my job as a moderator is just to make sure that we keep things on time. As we said, each section has only 30 minutes, so I wanted to apologize in advance if I cut anybody off, but we really do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to have this conversation. So let's get right to it. Our first topic is a big one: technology and paradigm shifts, the media landscape today. Our main speaker is Gary Chou. He's a venture capitalist based in New York, and as he describes it, an accidental independent film producer. He is the lead investor in David Boyle's last two films, including Daylight Savings, which premieres at the festival tonight. Our respondent is Wendy Levy, who is a senior strategist specializing in film and new media at Tomorrow Partners, an innovative creative agency in Berkeley with a focus on human-centered design, sustainability, and social change. So, without much further ado, let's start with Gary.
Do you want Wendy up as well, or no? Okay. Am I supposed to sit here?
Oh, and should I mention? And by the way, for those who are tweeting, you could also tweet hashtag PF Summit, so we know what people are talking about, and you could ask questions that way as well.
Okay, thanks. Hi, guys. Hello. Whoa, super bright. So, hey, who's on Tumblr? We have an awesome Tumblr on Tumblr called Present Future Summit. We've been using it to actually post some anecdotes, some quotes, and some images and videos of things that we're talking about today, as well as some background on the speakers. And our hope in the future is actually to continue to leverage it to keep this dialogue going. So if you're on Tumblr, check it out, follow it, and we'll be happy. And also, hashtag. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Thanks. So my name's Gary Chou, and Leanne did a really great intro, so I won't go too deep. But I will say that most of what I'm going to talk about today is really informed from my perspective as an investor. The firm I work with is called Unisquare Ventures. We're based in New York City, and we focus specifically on investing in the internet. And more lately, we've refined our investment thesis to be around large networks of engaged users. So some examples of networks, and maybe the best way to characterize what we've done. We were the first institutional investors in companies like Twitter, Etsy, Foursquare, and Kickstarter. And a lot of what we look at in how we approach technology in the world is a little bit less informed about, I'd say, advancements in technology, but more about the impact that technology has on people in society. So if we go to the next slide, please. And so when we think about this question of what's happening, in the world of technology. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm actually not going to talk about technology so much as I'm going to talk about structural and cultural changes that come about as a result of these things. Because in a lot of ways, we see the internet along the lines of transformational changes like the steam engine and the automobile, where you could choose to invest in automobiles, or you could choose to invest in the fast food joints and the drive-thrus and the types of businesses that arrive out of suburbia. And that's how we look at the internet. The internet, in a lot of ways, is a transformational engine, like automobiles and the steam engine and the industrial age. But there's a whole lot of activity that comes out as a result of that, and that's what we're primarily interested in. So, what is? We've talked. Let's go to the next slide. And actually, if you just move the mouse slightly away, then, ooh. Awesome. I think the biggest transformational thing that we've seen is really this concept of networks. And it's best described by this wonderful quote that Alec Ross, who is an aide to Senator Clinton, gave recently in the New Yorker, and I'll read it to you, which is, if there was one lesson I've learned in the last 3 years working for Secretary Clinton and being witness to significant shifts in power around the world, is that there's a significant shift in geopolitical power globally right now from hierarchies like the nation state to individuals and networks of individuals. This is something that's being accelerated by increasingly powerful and ubiquitous information networks. And so when you think a bit about what's been happening with the Arab Spring, with Occupy, the Occupy movement, with the SOPA PEEP debate that's been going on, what you're seeing really happening is a rise in power of a new structure that is fundamentally challenging the existing incumbents and the existing business models that have been put in place. And that tension that we see is at the heart of it a conflict of beliefs and a conflict of values. And this is really something that is kind of crazy in a lot of ways, and we're just getting started with it. So when we talk about networks in this sense, what does that mean in terms of the types of things that we invest in? So let's go to the next slide, and I'll show you some examples of kind of what we think about as networks. On the left-hand side here is kind of your typical, corporate network. So if you work in a large corporation where you report to somebody else, who then reports to somebody else, who reports to somebody else, that's one structure of how you could organize yourself. On the other side, you see something that resembles probably, more of what your Facebook graph looks like and what your Twitter graph looks like, which is that you're connected to a wide variety of people. No one's really telling you who to connect with. No one's giving you permission to interact or engage with anybody else. And there's no chain of command. There's nobody at the top. And why do we see kind of the emergence of these structures on the right-hand side? It's basically because all of these services that were born, whether they're Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, they're all born on the internet, and they all inherit almost kind of the set of values that went into the creation of the internet, which is that it had to be decentralized, so that most of you may know that the internet was initially a military creation. They wanted it to be decentralized so that the enemy, whoever the enemy may be, could not take out any single point and then cause a collapse of the entire system. And so they basically created systems that allowed them to be fully decentralized, and then the services that get built on top of that follow in that pattern as well. And the main theme, that we see in transitioning from hierarchies to networks, is this issue of control. In a hierarchical system, you can tell people whether or not a particular video or movie is available to be watched in a particular location. You can control the messaging of what you want to communicate to other people, even though maybe you may. So a great example of that is let's see. There's a lot of great examples of that. How many of you guys are on Reddit? Reddit's an interesting example we'll talk about in a second, but one of the things they did was when the SOPA PEEP debates were kind of really top of mind, GoDaddy ended up being a proponent of the bill, which was somewhat ironic given that their constituents are actually people that create things on the internet. And so that exposed a bit of a weakness in GoDaddy in that they had a particular set of values that were aligned politically, which went contrary to the values and beliefs of their constituents. And that contention caused them to cause the citizens of Reddit to eventually protest and eventually get GoDaddy to change their views. So the structural difference that we see here is something that's evident in a lot of other examples in some of our investments. YouTube is a place where anyone can create a channel and anyone can broadcast, and you don't need anyone's permission. You know, naturally there are guidelines, obviously, and those guidelines are less about imposing rules as much as they are imposing a set of values of what's acceptable. Twitter is a network that allows people to share. Tumblr's a network that allows people to self-express. Kickstarter's a network that allows people to fund and participate in creative projects. Etsy's a network that allows people to buy and sell. Skillshare lets people learn and teach from each other. And Reddit allows us to collaborate. And none of these systems are fundamentally organized in a way where there's a chief on top indicating what you can or can't do with the system. It's really up to the users, and the control is pushed out to the edges. And that is causing a dramatic shift. So if we go to the next slide, where does that leave us? I think the thing I will say is that there's a whole lot of uncertainty in terms of this rise of networks and what it really means. But on the other hand, I think that uncertainty also brings with it a fair amount of optimism, I think. Never before have we lived in a world where it's easier to have a voice and to broadcast it and get it amplified and to share it and to see an impact from that. And it is having an impact anywhere from a large scale, such as political change, to a small scale. One of my favorite stories about Reddit is a case that happened in December of last year, where a gentleman was coming up on his 24th birthday, and he was adopted. And he decided, it's my birthday, and I'm really starting to think about who my parents are, and I don't know who my parents are. So he posted all the information that he had on Reddit, which was basically 2 photos of his parents, some of their real names, and basically that was it. And then 5 hours later, thanks to the community of Reddit, who had all collaborated to basically go and search and find, and they were experts in using Google and whatnot, they found his parents, and they connected him to his parents. And his mom wrote him an email and said, it was this crazy emotional email, which was that, I don't know what to say. I'm completely shocked. I'm so happy, and I have to end this email right now, but we will talk soon. And then, they shared the fact that he had a sister and all these things. And so the fact that we are highly connected, the fact that we are using these systems, the fact that these systems are based on a set of values, that is all, I think, a very awesome thing for all of us who are creators. It's a little bit of a challenge to those who are in situations where they're typically controlling the way we communicate, what we think, what we consume. And there was someone who articulated this in really strong words, which I kind of agree with at this point, which is, the battle between hierarchies and networks is probably going to be more significant in the next few years in the future than the battles that we've seen around religion. And if you think about it fundamentally, what happens with hierarchies and with networks is fundamentally an issue of values and beliefs. Thanks.